Hello everyone and welcome back to Town of Salem 2. In this video we are going to play as a prosecutor. Hope you enjoy! Also, I decided to gamble in this game, which is very risky as a pros. Let's have a wheel ready in case there is a jailer. 10 says, I sense bad energy from you too. 13 says, he is evil. So as a prosecutor, it's ideal to reveal late game, but I usually reveal mid game or late game. Obviously, prosing day 2 is way too risky because there could be a conjurer, there could be a ritualist, there could be a doomsayer. So you shouldn't reveal too early, but then you shouldn't overcook it as well, because sometimes you're just surrounded by evils in the end game and it's just, you know, being a kingmaker, which isn't ideal. So let's see. We didn't get attacked, nice. I'm 5 on the list, so it's quite risky. It's almost in the middle. Okay, so they've killed 15. Rest in peace to 11, the berserker. They disconnected from life. So probably there isn't another epoch, because usually epochs DC when there are no other epochs, in my experience. Rest in peace to 15, the spy. They were killed by a shroud, so it's a shroud game. Good to know. Shrouds target town powers way too much, so it's a danger for us, because they will directly attack me since I don't visit anyone. Shroud. I will be going up the list. If on any night there is not a shroud kill, whoever has the highest number has defense. That's a lot of info. 10 the seer says 11 and 13 are enemies, attacked by barrier. I say gambling time. Oh, I can now hear whispers, nice. Or says 14 inner on Necronomicon holder. 14 says night 1 good. 11 or 6 since 11 was evil. Everyone says get 11, but 11 is dead. I shout 11 is dead. 13 says get him anyways. 1 says hang the corpse. 13 says by the way there is 2 cruise game. 4 says there will be 1 trial. 1 says the trial to end all trials. 10 says burn the dog's corpse. Wow. I say VFA. Why are we voting a psych who posted? What? 3 claims TP. Genesia. 4 is sheriff. 14 is psychic. I'm psychic who already posted. 7 says I was stupid. 14 says 6 is confirmed. 4 says we wasted our last trial on a psychic. 9 says bro you voted when only 1 trial and a TI. 13 says can you cruise stay at home? 1 says I may have early onset dementia, sorry 14. 13 says wait. And there is no more trials. 13 says I'm so confused right now. 10 says oh well. Oh nice, there is a party. 7 says the show must go on. I say yay party. 3 says TP on me. 1 says woohoo. 13 says if the 2 crusaders attack the seer. I say brought some candies and pumpkin juice. 14 says shroud, who you going, okay? I claim TS, 1 claims TP. 13 says can I at least get 1 TP? 13 says I think the 2 crusaders attack the seer. 7 says keeping the snail alive. 2 says what do you want? One of the TPs went on a seer. What? Rest in peace to the deputy. They were killed by the Coven. Sadly, they didn't get to shoot anyone. But if there is a necromancer or a retributionist, they can shoot instead. Rest in peace to illusionists. They were killed by Shroud. Thank you, Shroudy. Two shrouds, says the death note. And rest in peace to the seer. They were destroyed by a berserker, so we have a necromancer. Fantastic. What were the TPs doing? The seer died. I say no TP on the seer. 13 says, hey, was anyone else healed night 1? Apparently I was dreamweaved and I missed it, but now I have insomnia. 14 says that 6, 2 or 9 are evil, so it's a 1-for-1 between 2 and 9. I say gambling time, and I can see and hear dead people. Someone says bonus vote. I say hi dead people. Deb says hi 5. Ilu says hi 5. Sia says hi. 6 says Coven is Dreamweaver 5. 10 says 1 is Coven because 1 and 9 are friends. 6 says I was dreamweaved. I ask 10, are you sure? 10 says yes. I say there is a dreamweaver. 10 says what else it would be? 13 says I'm insomnia, can't help me. Nine says, how is one not getting hung lol? 10 says, what the fuck 5? Why don't you tell it to town? 8 says, 4 claim to check you 13. How are you insomniac? 13 says, which means 4 is fake, so we can hang that. I've been cured. I say, wait, we need to listen to the dead seer. Eno, let me do a thing. 13 says, pros 4. 3 says, necromancer game. I say seer says 1 is Coven. Prosecution time. 9 says Lamau. 1 says bro, I'm Shroud. Ilu says they weren't even Coven. 10 says they showed friends with 9. 9 says lol. I say good enough for me. 9 says it's Soul Collector game. 1 says also 14 has defense. 9 says no, wait. 13 says 4 goes next. 12 says cook, TPLO on 5 from now on. 6 says enchanter Soul Collector shenanigans. 9 says not even Soul Collector, unless Soul Collector was on 1 and me. 3 says I'm probs dead. 10 says wow. 14 says I was not even in tech y'all, do not listen to them. 10 says Soul Collector game. Nine says, the medium is pros. Phil says it's spelled immortal. 3 says, if you got any TPs left, please be on me. 7 says, no defense. 3 says, I shall protect 5. 12 says, invincible defense. I say we have 2 crusaders. 13 says, yes, we do. I say 1 on 3, the other on me. 7 says, I was on 4 before. 12 says, Cruz, don't go on 14, I'm checking him a scorer. 13 says, Dreamweaver's still alive, they're still out there. And this was Exy. Great. 9 says, lol, Exy. 10 says, it's Soul Collector Game 5. I say, bruh, not the best hang. 12 says, TP that don't go on 5, on me. 10 says, oh, token, I don't know. Nine says, oh, party. Why is everyone silent? I say 2, 8, 13, claim please. 7 says, great. 10 says, there must be only one TP IMO. 3 says, Necromancer game by the way. 14 says, for real, for real. 8 says, I'm Time Power. 13 says, how do we coordinate with 2 Crusaders? 12 says, I open claim Cora from the start. 14 says, guys, I silenced myself during the day with token. Holy. 2 claims TK. 12 says, nice. 14 says, but I think somehow still spoke during trial. Yeah, that's a bug. Sia says, that's probably just one claim. 13 says, Dreamweaver gun. 7 says, no. I say, nice. Poor 7, they were killed by the Coven, they were cleric. 7 says, fallen I have. 9 says, did the Necro kill you? 10 says, why the fuck visit 4? 13 says, I'm the oracle that saved the seer. 7 says, to the terrible town which plagues the town. 10 says, why? I asked for the TP. 9 says, bro, the Necro killed my Dreamweaver. Are you kidding me? Okay, so 8, the Dreamweaver goes down. They were killed by Shroud. 13 says, nice work. I say, thanks. 3 says, reminder, there is a Necromancer. 12 says, Dreamweaver and Shroud. 14 is not any of those roles. 3 says, inverted words. Damn it. I say, Dad say there is a Soul Collector out there. 13 says, I'm Oracle that saved Seer. 2 Crusaders come out. 3 says, it's me. 10 says, is there even a Crusader? 13 says, 3 and 3 says, I'm Crusader. 12 says, 13, 14 and 2. 12 says, 14 is in Shroud. 13 says, there is another cruise. 14 says, guys, I can see dead chat. 10 says, 7 says, 3 is what? 8 says, 12 is Shroud. 13 says, I had 2 Crusader messages. I say, Necro is the last Coven. 14 says, dead chat says that 12 is Shroud. Prosecution time. 12 says, yeah, right, I'm Shroud, 100%. Coro Gaming. 7 says, prosecutor holding town together. 12 says, info for you all. Now I proceed to die. 3 says, 2 is probably an Necromancer. 8 says, 13 was never Insomniac though. 3 says, Necromancer, if this is real. 13 says, well, we hang 2. 5 says, Dreamweaver, I say, Dreamweaver says that 13 was never Insomniac. 13 says, and I changed with Crusader. 14 says, bro. I say, sorry, 12. 3 says, doubt, hang 2. 9 says, rip corner. 12 says, 5, I hate you. For real. 14 says, well, just realized that chat saying that 8 was, that 8. So, 12 says, I open claim Cora from day 2. And you prost me. 10 says, 2 is not TK, hang this. 8 says, 14 is the Shroud, who didn't kill Night 1, so Cora couldn't find them. 7 says, oh damn. 9 says, yes please. 12 says, Flummery, you're right. 7 says, that's crazy. 9 says, HM tomorrow. 7 says, Hex Bomb. 13 says, 2 messages that said Crusader saved me. 7 says, Hex Bomb day 5. Gee, damn. 10 says, no bomb. I whisper to 13, the dead say 14 is Shroud. 9 says, well, Flummery. I whisper to 13, in case I die tonight. 7 says, this was Coven. 3 says, so 14 is fake probably. 13 says, it's okay, we can't lose because I don't have insomnia. And this was Necromancer. Nice. 13 says, Cruz can go on me. 7 says, who is the last man standing? 14 says, okay, do I stay at home? 7 says, what role? 9 says, not gonna lie. There is no more purple man standing. I write in my will, I'm so sorry. 12. I believed the dead chat. I believed the dead too much. So it says, damn, probably just a poke now. 8 says, yeah, no hex, just shroud left. Nine says, I think Necro used shroud. The monarch double knighted 3. I say, gambling. 13 says, why bother posting? I say 2 trials today, and I have defense now. Nice. CS says 14 is cooked, and 14 reveals themselves in the shroud. No! I say, lol, hi. 13 says, bro, I was attacked. What do you mean, no? Someone says, damn, 14. Fourteen says, look, bumfuzzle. I say, 14, any last words? 14 says, token got me. 13 says, token didn't do anything, we already knew. 7 says, the token giveth, and the token taketh away. 3 says, I've got inverted votes. 14 says, 13, players like you make the game not fun. 9 says, they can't vote, Lamau. 10 says, okay, W. 9 says, ah, they can. 14 says, if you're not gonna laugh with me, what's the point, guys? 10 says, 13 got votes, W roll. Fourteen says, nobody likes a sore winner. 13 says, there was nothing funny to laugh at, brain damaged. 14 says, I was gonna try to deny that flummery, not gonna lie. 13 says, deny that Cruz saved me. We both get the message. 14 says, but then it was like your role has been revealed. 10 says, 1 got enchanted by a token. 3 says, dual knighting moment. 14 says, yeah, I know, but it was still silly. Rest in peace to the shroud. 14 says, 13 needs to take a Xanax for real. And we won this! 7 says, facts. 14 says, it's a video game. 13 says, I still don't know why I got 2 Crusader messages. GG's! Okay, so I gambled and it paid off. And it was very risky as a prosecutor. Here are all the roles that we've had in this game. Thank you so much for watching this video. Here are the ones that might interest you as well. And see you soon in the next one.